Welcome to the Pennsylvania Trolley Museum's Zoom series, Trolleyology. My name is Kristen Fredrickson. I'm the Manager of Public Programs and Outreach at the museum. And thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome back to all of you who I have seen many times before, and to everybody who's new as well. This virtual series features programs on Pennsylvania transit history topics, stories of the trolley era, and art collection that you can experience from home, usually on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, whatever works best for our presenters. So we're going to continue these as long as we have presentations to share. So, and as long as people are watching. So thank you for tuning in. So if you have a show that fits our museum mission, please let me know. That would be anything about Pennsylvania, the trolley era, cities where our streetcars come from. And if you have something that doesn't quite fit those guidelines, please reach out anyway. We have a full list of upcoming presentations on our website at patrolley.org, and I'll share that link in the chat box in just a minute so you can click on it. I do have a couple extra or additional programs to add on there, so it's not quite up to date, but it will be later this week. And I want to extend a very special thank you to those of you who donated while registering for tonight's program. This program has already generated over $1,000 this year alone. So thank you to those of you who donated while registering or through our website. We really appreciate your support. Okay, so a brief introduction to the museum. We were established in 1954 as the Ardent Electric Railway by a group of trolley enthusiasts called the Pittsburgh Electric Railway Club. And we opened to visitors a few years later in 1963. We're located along the former interurban route between Pittsburgh and Washington, PA. And I need to update this. I think we have over 50 trolleys and electric railway cars in our collection now. About 20 of them operate. And we get over 30,000 visitors per year who take the 4-mile scenic ride here at the museum. Let's see, brief scheduling update. So we're still in May here. May, we're open Friday, Saturday, Sunday, but starting in June through August, we'll be open 6 days a week. So you have plenty of opportunities to visit us Tuesday through Sunday from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. And that is, we got lots going on, so come see us. If you haven't seen our new building, the perfect opportunity will be the West Penn Trolley Meet, June 7th and 8th. You see in the little bubble there, it says optional excursion, June 9th. That is actually sold out. So there is a wait list that you can register for on our website, but we're happy to say that our PRT special fan trip is sold out. So that doesn't mean that we don't have a lot going on at the museum as well. We have almost 50 vendor tables sold. If you're interested in selling model railway stuff or art or trolley memorabilia, there's still time to register for a table. Please get that into me as soon as possible. I think I said the deadline was like yesterday or today, but we still have some space. So let me know as soon as possible if you'd like to do that. We'll have some night photo shoots, trolley parades. We'll even have our Anything on Wheels event coinciding with this on Saturday and Sunday. So lots of old cars and all sorts of things to see. So definitely a great time to come out to the museum. Lots of interested, like-minded people, and it's always a lot of fun. Okay, so now I would like to introduce today's presenter, David Warner. So David is a retired U.S. Navy commander. During his 20-year career, he was the chief engineer of a nuclear-powered submarine and a member of the commissioning crew of the U.S.S. Albuquerque. He has worked in the passenger rail industry for over 27 years and is recently retired from SEPTA, where he served as the chief vehicle engineering officer for nearly 7 years. Together with different co-authors, Dave has written 4 books about Amtrak subjects. The Metroliners and 50 Years of Amtrak Trains were created with Bruce Goldberg. And last year, Amtrak by the Numbers 2 was published with L. Simon and Kevin U. Daly as co-authors. And Dave's first published photo graced the cover of the February 1976 issue of Traction and Models, and it was an image of Pittsburgh's The Spirit of 1776 bicentennial painted trolley on Arlington Avenue. Dave has lived in Wilmington, Delaware for the past 27 years with his wife, Ann, and 2 cats. Through the years, Anne has remained the same, while various cats have come and gone. Dave and Anne have 2 sons, both of whom work at Lockheed Martin. Okay, and at the end of the presentation, we will have a question and answer session with Dave, but the chat box will be open, so please feel free to enter questions and comments during the show, and we'll get to those at the end. And just to note, this will be recorded and shared on our YouTube channel at a later date. Okay, at this time, I'm going to ask everybody to turn their videos off. And at the end, I'll invite everyone to turn their microphones and videos back on. And at this point, Dave, take it away.
All right, let's see if we can do this. We practiced it, and I think it's going to work. Yes,
Looks
look at
good.
that. Look at that. Now I guess get the zoom out from in front of my screen, and we're ready to go. Well, thank you, everybody for joining us tonight. I can no longer tell how many people are here, so Chris will have to keep track of that. So if you are interested in PCCs, you have come to the right place tonight. If you like 1950s and 1960s automobiles, you've also come to the right place. If you have come to learn an impressive history lesson, however, you are in the wrong place. Tonight, we're going to show you what a nearly 16-year-old saw during a 4-day visit to Pittsburgh. Actually, it was 3 days, a little bit less than 72 hours, in April of 1971 during spring break. There is, because there is no history lesson or anything, you might think there aren't any quizzes, but there are actually two questions you have to answer during the course of the show. First is, how many times is the 1711 pictured as an identifiable trolley? And second of all, how much did the chicken wings at the KFC near the Arlington station cost in April of 1971? I will give you a disclaimer. Having lived in many places, I call these streetcars, I call them trolleys. I may even slip into tram or even Straßenbahn, because the story actually begins in Germany in 1964, when I moved to Germany with my family and quickly became enamored with the streetcar system, and spent weekends for the 3 years we were there, most weekends spending time riding around on the trolleys. The car you see here is a Frankfurt M type. It was the first articulated tram that was purchased by Frankfurt. It was built by Duwag and had Siemens technology, so we tended to call them Siemens Duwag cars. It is in the original livery that was on the cars delivered between 59 and 63. So they're a little bit younger than I am. These were the cars that were on the line that that came by my house, which happened to be one of the 2 lines, which were very similar to the Charleroi and Washington lines. They were interurbans that went off into the north of this Frankfurt surroundings, into the Taunus Mountains, and eventually they became part of the city system, similar to what happened in Pittsburgh going south. I rode these to school. They were also, being the newest cars, and Frankfurt was building a subway at the time, they were used as test cars, and frequently there would be 2 of the power cars coupled together. There were long stretches of track where they could get up to the astounding speed of 80 kilometers an hour, which is about 50 miles an hour. But I remember an operator saying, look how fast we're going. These cars were actually used in the first subway, and in order to fit on the platforms, the front doors, which were tapered, one of them was blocked off, which explains the red X that you see here. So only this door was functional. These were actually a stopgap measure, because the cars that were ordered for the Frankfurt subway were these. These are the U2s in the original livery. They came in a different livery from the trolleys. This is at the north end of the what used to be the 24. Now it's the U3, and it's at a place called Hohemark. And the school I went to was really down at the bottom of the hill back in the shadows there. Fascinating stuff, right? Well, yes, it is, because there's a Pittsburgh hook to this, is that these are U2s, and the first non-PCC trolleys purchased for the light rail system in Pittsburgh were siblings of these, the U2A. So interesting connecting of the dots. So how did we get here? Well, when we got back from Germany in 1969, I ran into a fellow high school student. I was in 10th grade, he was in 11th, and he liked trolleys, I discovered. And within 2 months, we ended up going to Philadelphia for a day rode around Philadelphia. That was my first trolley trip. He had a friend who was much more into railroading than John was. So Bruce, this guy who liked railroads, got me hooked up with the NRHS. At the NRHS, there was a gentleman who was in his, I call him gentleman now, he was an old guy in the mid-20s who liked trolleys. And however we managed to get my mom to agree to this, we went off, Bob and I, on a 4-day trip to Pittsburgh. You will see Bob in this show, you will not see me. I like this map of Pittsburgh because it gives a very good geographical picture of the where all the trolleys were. The stylized map that Pittsburgh Railways produced and that the Pennsylvania Trolley Streetcar Museum. See, I told you I was going to do this. So I don't want any comments in the chat that the guy doesn't know what the vehicles are called. Diversity here. The streetcar, even in the Pittsburgh Streetcar City map book that just came out, the map in there, it's all straight lines. So I'd never really gotten a good geographic feel for what the Pittsburgh system looked like. So all these black lines you see with my little red laser pointer, those are trolley lines, the streetcar lines. The ones that were running in April of '71 are here in yellow. So here's the line to Drake, here's the line to Library, here is the county line, which is an interesting point of reference, which I'll get to later. And then you have the hilltop lines of the 49, 44, and 53. So the story starts in downtown Pittsburgh on a Saturday evening, actually Saturday, April 11th, shortly before the taking over of passenger rail service by Amtrak. We rode the B&O at that time, Capital Limited, from Silver Spring to Pittsburgh. I'd never been to Pittsburgh. So when we got off the P&L at the PL&E station, I had no idea where we were, but it really didn't matter. Bob seemed to know where we were going. And we came upstairs and went out onto Smithfield Avenue or Street, and we're expecting to be able to take a trolley downtown. Nope, Pat was on strike. That was not a very good omen. So we walked into downtown, got to the hotel, and then the next morning, lo and behold, streetcars were running again. So the trip was salvaged after all. So the map that you're looking at now shows what was running in April of '71. I think it was a rare time that the 49 was actually going around the loop by Union Station. And the roll sign destinations of the 44 Knoxville still showed what used to go around there. So first picture, this is at 6th and Wood. The idea was we were thrilled. There's a trolley to take the trip on. So, because we really weren't sure what was going to happen. So we got on the 53 Carrick line. You will see pictures that show the photographic skills of a 15-and-a-half-year-old using his father's rangefinder camera with a fixed focal length and a separate light meter. So the street is really well exposed here, but trolley is not. But what's interesting is the amount of trackage that was still in the street here in 1971, because it wasn't that long ago that the lines got taken out. So we went down, rode the line out to Brentwood. I found something to climb up on, and then I ran out ahead of the streetcar as it went back into downtown and took a picture, and operator was kind enough to pick me up because he knew I was standing there. And we headed then into back into downtown Pittsburgh. From there, we essentially grabbed the next tram to the interurban lines. Before we do that, a couple of pictures during the presentation. We're going to do a then and now. And so here you see what I saw in 1971, and this is what Google Maps now shows you in 2023. And so all these buildings actually were there back in 1971. Steel Plaza, which is very evident in the right-hand picture, you can just barely see it. I guess the balcony structures or whatever there are here, the building was still under construction at the time in 1971. So heading down out to Drake, we stopped for 4 minutes at Washington Junction. I don't know why. My riding records show that. So for all of you folks who are under 30 and have a lot of riding left to do, I highly recommend you keep a good log of your travels, because it answers a lot of questions when you 50 years later are trying to do a show and wonder, why did I stop at Washington Junction when I thought I was on a car that was going to Drake anyway? Well, I don't know, but it gave us an opportunity to take the last shot, and then we went to Drake, which is this really weird place there. The streetcar just veered off to the right, down a big hill, around a very sharp loop, and then headed back into town. And we were told that the lines to library lines to Charleroi and Washington were cut back at the county line. And I actually believed that until I was doing this presentation and noticed that no, the Drake loop is way away from the county line. In the case of the Drake loop, it appears that Pittsburgh Railways just wanted to not have to worry about the big bridge that went across the valley here. But it was fun to climb up to the top, and a lot of these pictures, I am very glad that there were no leaves on the trees, because you're going to see that there were a lot of pictures through the trees as we go through the picture show this evening. So we left after being at the Drake Loop. We went back to Washington Junction, changed streetcars, and rode out to the West Library Loop, which I think is also called Simmons Loop. It's I've seen it called the stop is now Simmons, or what I guess what is now there is West Library or Library. I don't know. It's not nearly as attractive as this picture, I'll tell you that. So then we went back into the PNLE station with this car and got on a 4238 and went out to the Clearview Loop and got that mileage. Notice that we missed the 4238X between here and Castle Shannon, and that was on our agenda for the next day because that was a rush hour only service at the time, and all these pictures were taken on a Sunday. We then headed back into town, and it was time to go up over the hill lines again, and headed out towards Penn Station to get the 49 Beltzhoover. So this is the outbound car. I think the service on a Sunday was provided by just one car, having just crossed under the Pennsylvania Railroad Bridge. And this is what it looks like today. The bridge actually is almost completely unchanged, doesn't have a keystone on it anymore. The parking garage over here on the right-hand side in the right pictures where my pointer is, that's obviously been rebuilt. Still, according to Google Maps, is a Greyhound bus station. And then, of course, on the left-hand side is, I guess those are all buildings associated with the Lawrence Convention Center. So it was time to ride the 49, and we, in fact, did that. We had been told that it went through a very bad part of town. So it makes me chuckle now, but we stayed on the trolley. We just went around the loop with the operator, whatever layover time he had there, stayed on, and then came back into town. So we don't have a picture of that, but I know we did it because I have my riding record book notes. And we came back to the PL&E station, and then we went up the Monongahela incline, and then we came down the Monongahela incline. And then we happened to run into not only an outbound streetcar again, but the Shenandoah, which was the only other train on the former B&O. And the shadow, it was taken in the shadow. My light meter did an okay job of taking care of it, and then Photoshop helped brighten it up. But one car and an interesting destination. This was train number 11-7 from Washington, D.C. to Akron, Ohio. And looking at the official guide, I think that's as far as the train could go. They could spin it and send it back without needing a second train set. I mean, it's really reasons unknown to me. So, but it was fun to see. And then we headed back in towards town because we were going to do some bus riding. So here's an outbound car on the 4238. So the buses that we took, you'll be pleased to know, one of them was the 11E Fineview, because the 21 Fineview streetcar wasn't running anymore. And then we also took line 21A to Albuquerque, which best I can figure on looking at my maps was what was running in place of the long abandoned streetcar line to Sweckley. I think Albuquerque was the county line. I haven't confirmed that, like I looked at the Drake Loop, but that makes sense that, you know, the bus was going to stop at the county line because it wasn't outside of that. They weren't getting funding for the service. We then have a lot of evening stuff. We went back out to South Hills Junction, took a couple of pictures. This actually, most of the streetcar is in the picture, not in this one. And the reason is it's a close-up, and I had a rangefinder camera, and there are a couple places where, you know, those of you who are old enough to have worked with a rangefinder camera, you get far enough away from the camera, basically you're seeing what the camera sees or the film sees. But if you're up close, there is a parallax and you get an interesting offset, and so you get some weird shots. But I am not ashamed to show you these because I wasn't even 16 at the time, and I was still learning the ropes.
Small
And
request
occasionally
from a viewer, Dave, to move the cursor from the screen when perfect.
Okay. You don't like the little red light they're showing on them?
Yeah, it looks like
Nice
it doesn't
headlight. There we go. Okay.
Thanks.
Sorry about that, guys and gals. By the way, by now you have probably figured out I'm not giving you the car number and the route of every single picture. That's because the location, car number, and route are in the red banner at the bottom of every picture. Recall back towards the beginning, this was the first day after a strike. I think it was related to this. This was also the last day of the current fare system, and a new fare system with higher fares was going into effect on Monday. This picture here of the carrot car is taken on a Sunday evening. However, we were riding around all day on a day pass. The pass was good to 5 o'clock the next morning, and I was going to get my money's worth out of that pass. Bob, being in his mid-20s, did not see the fun of trying to ride trolleys all night, but I sure did. And so through the middle of the night, I went out to library a couple of times. For some inexplicable reason, there was a gap of about an hour in downtown Pittsburgh. I don't remember what I did. I think my sanity probably should have been questioned there, but hey. And then early in the morning, came out to the line to Castle Shannon. It was a morning short turn and ended up taking what was probably one of my most favorite pictures, because the blue of the sky was just stunning. And I call this early morning bookworm. And to add to that, that is my book bag from Europe, which I was using as a camera bag. So it's got all the essential things in it. I then went back to South Hills Junction as the sun began to come up, and the saner people in the city who had slept all night were beginning to come to work, and took a sequence of pictures of cars going back and forth. I think this was the first car I saw that had what was the new PAT scheme. And the car coming downhill from Carrick. Have a pullout. I presume it is, because it was interesting to me that the destination signs just told you what route you were on. It didn't tell you where it was going. It just told you the route. And that was in the day when transit riders were a bit more savvy, though in a city with as many twists and turns and hills as Pittsburgh, I think even locals could have gotten lost and gotten an outbound car instead of an inbound, at least once or twice before they figured out which way they really needed to travel. So this is a inbound car coming from the interurban lines. We have one of the 1600s heading into the tunnel. This is a pullout for Drake. Knoxville car coming out of the tunnel. And then I got on that car and rode it out to the end of the line at Amanda and Charles, where I took the next two pictures. In the background of the picture you're looking at now, you can see an outbound car on the 53 Carrick. One of the things that I really liked about Pittsburgh back in the day was there was still this sense of network, which you didn't get that in Boston, where I had visited earlier, because all the lines were together and then they all split. Philadelphia had a little bit of network feeling about it, but it was still on the grid network of Philly. It wasn't the same. I mean, there was clearly something cool about Pittsburgh, and the fact that there were also all these hills and things was fascinating. So the Knoxville car, is the old time Pittsburghers would know, used to go to Penn Station, and that blank area to the right over the operator used to say via Penn Station. And I think somewhere in the, certainly either this trip or my next one, I did catch a destination sign that hadn't been painted out. So after this brief visit to the end of the Knoxville line, I went back into town. I think Bob was probably about to wake up here, and caught some early morning pictures. These are all taken really before 7 o'clock. So, I mean, it wasn't even rush hour yet. This isn't a quiz, but where is this? Oh, it's Smithfield Plaza, a brand new 26-story office building coming to a square near you in downtown Pittsburgh. Liberty and Smithfield. When we were going through these pictures for the dry run, if you will, Christian asked me if it was haze or smog. And I think it was haze this morning because we really had pretty good weather and fairly clear skies. But it's just this very nice atmospheric result that fortunately the light meter, which then the operator had to set onto the camera, really worked out pretty well. This catches a special moment in time, which are the unique green to green-yellow phase of streetlights in Pittsburgh, which I doubt they are still like that because it's not part of the uniform standard of signage and stuff. After this, I took a break, took a small nap, and then I ended up at 7 o'clock and woke up again around noon. And we went out, Bob and I together went out to South Hills Junction. This is a map of what we did. Actually, this is a map of what was there. So you have the 4238 over here. You have the interurbans here. South Hills Car House station is here. Here's the line going up to Warrington Avenue, and Beltzhoover line sneaks in here. The blue line is the route of the old 40, and not shown here, but shown on the maps you can get from the Streetcar City book is the used to be a car line 33 that actually got turned into a bus line 200, and I don't know what it is now, if anything. But what we did, Bob and I, essentially we walked down, actually along Boggs Avenue, down onto Warrington, came back up, and then sort of headed back down the yard. And you will see that there's nobody bothered us at all. So this shot here is taken looking back towards South Hills Station of the cars that I think these were sort of still in service, but I can't be sure of that. And looking closely, certainly the wire didn't extend up to where we were standing. As we were heading on our way south, the cars came by on the interurban line and taking advantage of no leaves and a reckless abandon of whether I'm looking into the sun or not. We took this shot. Here is another photograph taken just a eighth of a mile away, and now we're much higher than the interurban is. Down towards the lower end, looking back up through the yard. I think that's a school powerhouse, or it's a powerhouse of some kind with the 3 chimneys. And over on the right-hand side here is the main line. This car is headed out towards Mount Lebanon Beachview. Another inbound trolley. And then we told you we were going to go up Warrington Avenue. And as we walked up Warrington, an unidentified PCC came by. So we took a picture. And this is what it looks like today. The embankment, or abutment, I should say, is still there on both sides. The bridge is no longer there. But interestingly, this is location here on the left. Same as here on the right, there's still overhead wires and still trackage on this section, because it was when the subway in Pittsburgh first opened, there was a local service that ran between South Hills Junction and downtown and back. That's, I think, long since gone, but I think that these tracks are still there and usable.
Sorry to pop in, but some helpful comments from the chat that are related to the slides that we were just on. Everyone's saying that those stacks were for ventilating the Liberty tunnels.
Okay.
Yeah, and then also a comment from one of our volunteers, George Gula, that the Route 40 tracks were used for active cars that were usually in tripper service during rush hours.
Okay, so
So-
they were in active service.
Huh.
Well, this actually provides a awesome opportunity to thank George Gula, because his show a year ago inspired me to put this show together. So thank you, George. Returning to our wandering around the yard, we came across some now work cars. And this is the ever popular, I'm going to take a picture directly into the sun. Oh, and get the front of the streetcar directly behind a pole. So this goes firmly into the category of don't do this. But it's not a terrible shot. But I like doing it so much, I did it again. And I think this was this is a revenue car. So we again said we kind of walked up, we came back down to the south end. This is a loop that was at the and I don't know if it's called the Palm Garden Loop or Sawmill Loop. It's the Sawmill Run Trestle. And you can always find different names for different places. But it was, I mean, we thought it was cool because we could watch some of the goings of the cars that, were moving around the yard or whatnot. All of this meandering took the better part of about 2 hours. We also continued, this picture truly would not be possible if there were leaves on the trees. And for those of you who remember it, or even if you didn't, this is what the trestle used to look like before it was turned into the South Busway. I think now you shouldn't walk about it. We shouldn't be walking in many of the places we took these pictures. We'll tell you that, especially this next picture where my friend Bob doing his best Blues Brother imitation long before, I mean, he was way ahead of his time. Remember, this is 1971. And we had to get out of the way of a car shuffling around the yard. Back to the two work cars, and we climbed into one of them. The newspapers weren't that old, kind of interesting. So they were, I guess, seemingly being used. So after spending two delightful hours wandering around the yard, we got on a 4238X and went to Castle Shannon. So just for the next several slides, you might want to take a screenshot of this so you know where we are. Castle Shannon's down here, Motorman Training Loop. The stops that are listed are the stops that exist today. Here's the old loop, which is now an empty space. Nothing's here because the line itself splits off here. So now what we're going to do is, and what Bob and I did, we started here and walked up to here. This was the car that we had ridden down from South Hills Junction. Clearly marked 4238X, Castle Shannon. This is the southeast end of the Motorman's practice loop. There used to be a track that came off of here that I don't think is this, buried in the dirt, that let cars actually go north on the interurban line or the Overbrook line. So we moved over to get in position for the 1772 to go in town, and interurban came by. And then the car that we were looking for came by. And of course, the track in the foreground, that allowed northbound cars to actually head into town over the Mount Lebanon Beachview line. Now, this is the main line of the light rail, or one of the light rail lines, as you all know. So we walked up along the Motorman's practice loop. Outbound car shows up. Glad we were plenty clear, so it's heading down into the loop. And interesting grade elevations here. Kind of makes you wonder if there wasn't something here before, and that, or plans to build up the land. I mean, now I know this is all flat. This is actually the parking lot for the light rail stop at. So we then walked along the line, got up to Mount Lebanon Boulevard, and in came the car. Notice that there's still lots of the normal inbound car tracks here, indicating this had been mostly double track. And this is what it looks like today. This is actually a twofer. So the picture I just showed you, this building here is this building here. That garage is no longer there, but there is, low shopping buildings here. Where you were looking at here, there used to be the shelter for the Cook Lane stop. And this is what it looked like. Very attractive, a little bit more attractive than some of the others. It had somebody spent some time to make sure the bottoms of the slats weren't all the same. And you look over here, and here is the Kentucky Fried Chicken. Now, I don't think we actually stopped to get lunch, though we did, or actually mid-afternoon snack. But for a mere dime, you could get a real wing, all three parts of it put together, just like Colonel Sanders and his chickens were meant to be. So as 1643 goes by, we turn around. Clearly, the right-of-way was wide enough for two tracks, even if you hadn't had the visual indicator on the previous track image. And lo and behold, there are two tracks again. This is same view. This is the Arlington stop. Now, Arlington plays into some of the non-history history we're going to talk about. But this portion where we just finished walking was originally part of the Pittsburgh and Castle Shannon Railroad. And that, I'm going to leave that there. If you want to know more about it, I do not encourage you to run to your Pittsburgh Streetcar City, where there's a paragraph that tells you why this is such an important railroad. I would ask that you please keep watching for a few more pictures, and we'll have a big reveal. So this is a view from the parking lot of the Kentucky Fried Chicken. We had more important things to do, I have to say. We had to get pictures of PCCs on a rush hour only line. So we started walking up towards Pennsylvania Avenue Boulevard passing siding. That may or may not be the name, but when you're new to a city and you have a map, you give things names that make sense to you. And Pennsylvania Boulevard made a lot of sense because that's what parallels the track on both sides. Here is the outbound car. This picture is one of the ones I refer to as I wish I had a telephoto, or I thought I had a telephoto, but I don't have a telephoto. But since I knew I didn't have one, and I know that probably all makes no sense now, you just get another picture with the car closer together. This also has all the trappings of a car that has not been out of the paint booth that long. And since you're all muted, I can say this and we won't hear the jeers, it's kind of attractive when it's freshly painted. Oh, and you also can't throw, if you throw stuff, it's on your screen, not my screen. So anyway, continuing towards the Clearview Loop. This is an outbound car. And now we get to the title photo, which is a mere 5-minute walk from where Kristen lives. And that is why this was the picture that was chosen. In addition, when was the last time you saw a red and blue mailbox? And it has a very basic shelter to it, and it's just pretty. This is what it looks like now. Very utilitarian. The shelters have been painted recently. They used to be brown. Now they're blue. When they were brown, there were still some newspaper boxes on the platform. There used to be a trash can. I think the trash can is still there. There's one on each sign. This is definitely not ADA compliant, but then I would argue it doesn't really need to be because this is a low-level platform and no way to have people step up from it. So the PCC in the background has now come up to where we were. We're continuing to walk northwest. And this is a wooden trestle that is now just a more modern but boring looking bridge with a 1600 coming inbound. And here's our 1770. We saw 17. We did. It took long enough to do this, you know. And you know that because what was the car that we started with? 1772. So it's had enough time to go into town, come back out, and now it's going back into town. And in fact, it did take us about 2 hours to make this whole walk. Getting in close to Clearview Loop, definitely the right-of-way is getting overgrown. It's an inbound car, outbound car that we found, ran into some kids who they weren't up to mischief. That was fine. And they weren't throwing stones at the streetcars that came by. In the background, you can see there's a normal 4238 looping. And we got a Shannon Drake train. Like, okay, what is it doing here was our reaction. Now we know what it's, we have figured that all out now. And it was just avoiding congestion outbound on the Overbrook line, which, as those of you who are familiar with Pittsburgh, which I presume most of you have some Pittsburgh familiarity, you definitely have more familiarity than I did when I was taking these pictures. It's a single track with passing sidings. And so an inbound car is basically deadheading. So it came over on Mount Lebanon Beachview, which we thought was the coolest thing. So we took a car from the Clearview Loop. Actually, we took the car that you just saw and rode into South Hills Junction. And that was pretty much the end of the day. We made one more trip. You can tell it's beginning to get dark. So this map you really should highlight because it's most of what we're doing for the rest of the show. It's tomorrow. This shows red is double track, green is single track of all the lines up on the hill, and dark green is a piece of private right-of-way that automobile drivers sometimes thought they could use as a shortcut, which always ended very badly. We did get one picture at Charles and Knox. This is 2 inbound cars at the end of rush hour. It took me actually a long time to figure out where this picture had been taken. But this patio here and that window right there, they're still there. I mean, the street looks very much the same as it does now. And then essentially you turn around 180 degrees and here's an outbound car as the sun goes down. So that was it for taking pictures that day. We did do some evening riding, but we didn't do any picture taking. So now we get to our third and last day here. And this is, we start out at the very early hour of 11:45 a.m. Not sure why we slept in that much, but we did. So this is train 53 from Pittsburgh to Chicago, leaving at 11:45 from Penn Station. We then went out to South Hills Junction, and for the next 4 hours, or actually 5 hours, we just walked the streets of Arlington and Knoxville and that area. So we start with an outbound 44, and inbound Carrick. Always a good idea, take pictures of the infrastructure because it's not going to be there forever. I have a corresponding picture of this taken, I think in 1989, when the light rail tunnel had been built. I think, but even earlier, it eventually got paved because buses went through it before it got completely rebuilt. Car coming down from the Overbrook line. Pretty car coming out of the tunnel. Up at Haberman Yard, where in about about a year from the time of these pictures, this became a graveyard of PCCs. Apparently this was had previously also had that distinction. This is where PCCs went to die. But it was a pretty nice right of way, nice private right of way. And then there's this bridge, which in 1971 basically was a bridge to over nowhere. I mean, why? And you can see from two pictures earlier, there's really no elevation change. There's a couple of feet, but why a bridge? Well, some of you know the answer. It's in Pittsburgh Streetcar City, but this is the answer. This was part of the Pittsburgh and Castle Shannon Railroad. This open area here was the south incline to get over the hill into or down to Carson Street. And the railroad itself, when it wasn't an incline, there was actually a horseshoe here. And I could go into this and waste the rest of our time together, but I won't. But I'm going to give you two links at the very end so you can go down this fascinating rabbit hole, which Kristen turned me on to because I said, you should know what this bridge is for. And she said, yes, I do. And here's a link to learn more about it. So going back to Warrington Avenue, we're walking east on Warrington Avenue. A little bit of flat, then there's a hillside. What a surprise, hills. Streets aren't very wide. The operators said that they sideswiped automobiles all the time. If they got by after sideswiping it, there was a time when that was just good enough. Nowadays you couldn't get away with that. But you can see that the tracks are sort of offset to one side, but yet there's still parking, as you can see when the car in the background. Now the Sinclair gas station, the building is still there. This is what it looks like today. I mean, there's still tracks here too, so that you can get to the detour around over the top. This building here on the left is this building here. Here, this is the building across the street from the gas station. The gas station itself is this empty spot right here. And you can just barely see the roof line of this. It's fascinating what is and isn't still around. So walking further up the hill, it's a pretty substantial hill, even looking up and looking down. Then get to the corner of Warrington Avenue and Beltzhoover Avenue. And there's some interesting track designs to note here, is that this is a car heading into town, and the Beltzhoover line turns on these tracks to go up Beltzhoover Avenue. They are not far enough apart to allow PCCs to pass. So in Philadelphia parlance, they were no clearance curve. So I don't know if there were signs that indicated that to the operators. Here in Philadelphia, there are signs still hanging from the wires that say no clearance. Looking on the other turn, which is very frequent because it has Route 44 on it, the tracks are built way far enough apart to allow opposing moves to occur at the same time. We have it, here we go looking outbound. Notice that there was a Esso station here, 2 blocks away was the Sinclair. It's 34 cents a gallon. It's 1971. Do the inflation calculation. I don't think it's all that much different today. It's always fun to get 2 cars in the same picture as we did the previous one and this one. So heading off of Warrington, and now we're going up Beltzhoover. Here is a inbound 44 car with a Natalie dressed gentleman waiting to get on. Here is an outbound 44 car. And if you are keeping track, you can figure out how many cars were on the line. I think it was somewhere around 6 were needed to make service, maybe a little bit more. Again, we are doing this for a period of 4 hours, or nearly 5 hours, I'm sorry. And so we saw the same cars a couple of times. 49 seemed to have just 1 car, and it's the one that's sneaking up in the back on this picture. But eventually it showed up, and Bob took a picture of it too, just like me. Except my picture has Bob in it, his doesn't have me. And to this day, I don't think he took any pictures of me. I hope Bob is on this. I told him he should watch because he's going to see the pictures that I took. Some of these he saw the Blues Brothers pictures, but the others he has not seen in the 24 years since, or 23 years since we did this. So you'll remember I said that the Beltzhoover line went into a bad neighborhood. We shouldn't walk there. So we didn't. We walked by it. Okay. And I realize it sounds really silly now. Back in the day, it made a lot of sense to us, I guess. So this is one of these, I wish I had a telephoto shots. But it's also very fascinating to take a look at what this looks like today. This white building here is that building there. So there's, and so there is a focal length problem, as I'm sure you've figured out by now. This building here, though, is this building here. And then if you look, I'll go back a shot. This is a very busy, crowded street, or at least it's crowded. Buildings, both sides, cars, you name it. You can tell from here, it does have that bombed out look now, which is really sad. As the approaching car got closer, we took a picture of it. I'm not sure I would have taken this picture today because, oh, the nose is in the shade and okay, fine. I think it's a really nice picture because it captures the moment of these kids who probably were also on spring break with their high handlebar bikes, being very well behaved, waiting for the car to go by. The operator clearly is paying attention to them. And then off he goes, also making sure nothing's coming at him on Climax Street. Continuing south on Beltzhoover, we get to Orchard Place and Sylvania. So what I want to point out in this picture is the street sign. Notice the angle of the street sign. And this is it looks like a church, and it was, and it's still a social service building of some kind. But the street, it's just bombed out. This building, this sign here is this sign over here on the right. So you can get a perspective. And I said, pay attention to the tilt of the street sign. It still tilts. And it's the same pole. It's at times, it's amazing what has not changed over 50 years. Though there are some changes. Very interesting. I took this picture because actually it's really the next one that I took was I saw a telephoto picture where it looks way down a hill with the trolley at the bottom. So I said, well, I can do that. Well, yeah, you can, but it doesn't work well if you don't have a telephoto shot. But that's okay because you got these fabulous automobiles in the foreground. You also have some very interesting street treatments. I mean, this is obviously the cobblestones completely deteriorated here. Here they were still kind of okay. I mean, And there was no maintenance going on, I would say. These lines are being abandoned in 6 months. I don't know how and when in our trip we found that out, but it was early enough that the reason we did what we did, basically 5 hours up here that I'm showing you now, was because we knew these lines were going away, and we had no hope at the time that we would be, I didn't think I'd be back to Pittsburgh again when they were still running either. So you grabbed what you could. Here's that car in the previous picture cresting the hill. I think Bob has got his picture. I really wanted to show you a then and now shot of these buildings because these are still here. They're buried by trees, and so it really wasn't worth it. But they come down to the corner of Beltzhoover and Charles, and then we head on to Charles Avenue, which is, as you saw in the previous picture, it's one of these marvelously narrow, quintessential Pittsburgh neighborhood streets that you'd never think nowadays you could put I'll call it light rail system on, or even a streetcar. But this was, I think, very typical. I mean, looking at some of the other Pittsburgh pictures I've seen in books and slideshows, yeah, this was perfectly fine. It was normal, and there were little driveways, and you can see the cars parked in them over here on the here, and yeah, there's a van there. So again, like taking pictures, car far away, car closer. Not every picture has to be a 3/4 shot. And I think maybe not being quite so smart about that, you end up with some pictures that you are now look like treasures that were not back then. And even Charles Street is, it undulates. Flat is not a word, except for that one stretch of Warrington Avenue, it seems. And this car is essentially going inbound where that last shot of the previous day was taken outbound, which I realized was just, well, put a better reference on it, the picture before the picture of the Penn Central train. As the map shows, the Route 44 did a several block loop around several blocks, hence a several block loop. So this is it has just turned onto Knox Street, and that was about it for the 44. I'm not sure why, even though we walked down to the end of it and around the south portion, we didn't get another picture, but then we ended up on Brownsville Avenue, and we started heading back into South Hills Junction. One of the few gray cars that we saw. This is Arlington, and this is outbound on Arlington Avenue. Brownsville is behind me. There's a couple of pictures we took here because this is actually a very interesting location. This is if you look this way, turn 180 degrees, this is what you got. Tracks for the Arlington line still completely in place. The tracks for when the Carrick line went down to Carson Avenue here are still in place. As a result of the rerouting, Carson, the 53 ended up, instead of going into downtown in an east-west direction, it ended up becoming north-south. And when you look at the map I had at the very beginning, what you notice is, and it makes sense, but it was kind of a little epiphany of only the north-south looping lines still existed by the time 1971 came along. All of the ones east-west, or the ones that were northwest, south, northeast, southwest along the Allegheny River, they were all gone by the time we were there. And so while this was the system was a shadow of itself, we were having a blast. This is what this intersection looks like today. the building is still there. Actually, a lot of stuff is still there. This is still a gas station at the corner here. The Gulf building is no longer Gulf Oil, but it is still some building. If you want to do some archaeology of the buildings in the back, do it. You'll have time when this becomes a recording and is saved for posterity. And you'll see that, most of the buildings in the background are still there. The Gulf Oil Station is not, but it's an empty spot. Which is a lot of gas stations become that. So now we turn around again to the first picture there on Arlington Avenue, because even though we had a picture, well, there's a lot of activity now. We have an outbound car, we have a traffic jam, we have this cute little bug, and we have an inbound car turning onto the private right-of-way. So on the other side of that private right-of-way, this is what it looks like. And this was not a staged photo. The driver actually was driving up the hill and realized he was going to lose the law of gross tonnage rule event with the streetcar coming downhill. So he was furiously backing up as this car came downhill, and you can see who won. This building here is still here. This building is gone, if I recall correctly. It's an empty space, and I'm wondering whether this isn't actually owned by the Port Authority. But Google Maps, you can still see where this was. We then headed down Mount Oliver Street and Amanda Street. Again, another one of these. I wish I had a telephoto lens, but I'm going to pretend I have one anyway. I'm not really sure, again, because this is not a history lesson, but you see Arlington Avenue was wide enough for 2 tracks all the way. So why was there this single track loop for the inbound? And I think it was because at the extreme northeast end, at the end of Mount Oliver Street, the intersection was where 2 inclines from Carson Street came up. So I think, and that makes sense to me. Maybe it makes sense to you. And if it's not true, someone's going to tell us in the chat, and we're all going to be smarter. So this is the sort of tail end of the single track back towards Arlington, and obviously, since we didn't get many pictures out there, there was a service disruption of a little bit because we didn't get, because I know that's how we walked. We followed the tracks just to see them. We also took a brief detour down Upper Arlington Avenue with catching the same 49 that we had before. It got closer, and then it went away, and you got a nice shot of Pittsburgh Valley. And with that, we ended up heading to South Hills Junction. This was beginning to get later in the day. It was almost 5 o'clock, and I had a 10 o'clock train to catch, the Manhattan Limited, to go visit my grandmother who lived outside of Newark, New Jersey. And she was actually a trolley ride away. I got to ride the city subway often when I went to see her. But we conclude here with a bunch of pictures from Carson and Smithfield, because even though they may all look alike, they all are somewhat different, and something is just enough different in every one of the pictures, and you close your eyes and 30 seconds later it looks like a whole new scene. It was cloudy. It actually drizzled a little bit, and that worked to our advantage because most of these pictures are taken due south. So, didn't have to worry about sun angle, but 5 o'clock, they were probably, if you'd looked right along Carson Avenue, you'd have gotten sunlight. So this is what, this is a 44 and a 36 coming out from underneath the tunnel crossing under the Panhandle Railroad, which was a PC line. I rode over it with the National Limited. Here's another bookworm. Looking a little bit worse for wear. Mount Lebanon Beach view with a cop out there in the middle of the intersection with absolutely no protection. We see him in another couple of shots here too. You can see how it's raining here. It's looking over to downtown. Liberty Bridge is in the background, as is the bridge that the light rail now uses. Didn't really bother me that I was getting automobiles in the way, I think. Remember, I told you if you didn't like PCCs but liked all old automobiles, this was a good show to watch. The Monongahela Incline. Nice shots with the PMLE station. This actually was probably the only time I got upset at a PCC because it was close to being in danger of getting in the picture of the incline. Looked like the sun was beginning to clear out. Cars coming back from downtown. Taking some of them, occasionally you can see the people in them. They were all very crowded, even with whatever fare increase occurred this day, or the previous day, I should say. Wanted to get a little bit of perspective of the space, but it was always nice to see two red cars. And then a fairly clean gray car. Now, I know the cop is not getting hit here, but all I can think about is the scene in Flashdance when I look at this picture now, where the cop is sort of seemingly dancing around as he's directing traffic. Again, that's about 15 years in the future, or actually not even that, about 10 years and 12 years in the future. And that was how I knew that the subway in Pittsburgh was being built, actually, because some of the scenes in that were taken near Penn Station. At least it looked like it was Penn Station and a construction zone. I said, okay, that makes sense to me. This is what it looks, the difference between then and now here. Of course, the light rail heads this way, doesn't come up Smithfield. It's pretty, kind of sterile. I like the picture on the left better. So a more close, it is really, I never did get a successful picture of a car going in to the tunnel or coming out because it's really dark and you're not, there was really no clearance to walk under this bridge, even though there was a sidewalk. It just didn't feel right. Seemed no matter what, there was always cars, except sometimes you got lucky. Got lucky twice. But I'm going to back up one because I did want to point out that even here, there's still a lot of, back in 71, there was a lot of the old trackage still in place. So we're beginning to realize that we got to go to the train. So we start walking across Smithfield Avenue Bridge. But you never get too many good pictures of a PCC. Here we are on Fort Pitt Boulevard, outbound Mount Lebanon Beachview train, car, excuse me. Our inbound Beltzhoover car, same car all day. I mean, they may have, I think there's the shot on Arlington Avenue is a different car. And now we have also, there's a train on the Penn Central line in the background. And my laser is beginning to get tired. So That's okay. It's only got 2 pictures left to go. Looking the other direction on Fort Pitt. And then it's kind of like this is the last shot. And I debated whether to do a then and now here, but most of these buildings are still here. It's not a art pet shop anymore, and the hobby center is gone, and the Post Traveler is not there, but the buildings are. It's fascinating, and the trolley tracks aren't gone. So that's what was in Pittsburgh in April of '71. I thank you for your attention. I promised you some bonus history, and I would highly recommend you write down the URLs here, because you will learn more than you ever, unless you have been a student of the Pittsburgh and Castle Shannon Railroad, you will learn more than you ever thought you could about it. It is really fascinating, the fact that the Pittsburgh and Castle Shannon is the route which the interurbans use from South Hills Junction to Castle Shannon, and an affiliated railroad is the route that was used to go to Charleroi and Washington. So this point, I guess I don't want to stop sharing, because I want to give people a chance to either take a screenshot so that they can go down the same fabulous rabbit hole that I went down. But I think we can unmute, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Perfect. Yeah, I think we exchanged these links in an email. So I'm like trying to find them so I can copy them and paste them in the chat so people can click on them.
Okay.
I will find them in a minute. But in the meantime, thank you so much, Dave. That was great. Some of the comments that I wrote down, Terry Perkins said, great photographs for a kid. Like, I mean, especially at the end there, there's just so much happening with, like, everybody loved all the automobiles. I also loved seeing the 1971 fashion on the sidewalks there.
Mhm.
And then Kirk Schneider remarked, that was a lot of film.
Yeah. And on the salary, the little, I'm not sure I had a job then either. So yeah, that was a lot of film. Worth every pixel. Well, now we're worth every little crystal of silver, I'll tell you. So thank you. Yes. and most of it was Ektachrome. So I had not learned the magic of Kodachrome yet. And yes, they were all scanned, and they all have been a little bit color corrected. I'm not an expert color corrector, so there are variations, but I've tried to scan the oldest pictures that I have, just because some of them are eventually they just got to, it's inevitable, they're going to fade away.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, before I let folks unmute themselves, I am going to take over the screen share momentarily here. I'm going to try to find those links so we can put them in the chat. Just really quick, the next Trolleyology we have will be on June 5th, which will be a little different for us. Our presenter is going to be in the Netherlands 6 hours ahead. So he'll be doing this at like 1 a.m. his time, which is amazing because it's a really unique presentation called Rails to Victory, Allied Rail Operations in Europe After D-Day. And then again, the West Penn Trolley Meet is coming up as well. And then I do want to thank again everybody who donated when registering for the program tonight. If you want to support us in any way here at the Pennsylvania Trolley Museum, you can join as a member, become a volunteer, or just visit patrolley.org/support to learn how you can do that. Okay, so yeah, I invite you all to turn your screens on now. Or your videos back on, sorry about that. And let me make it so people can unmute themselves here. In the meantime, one thing I noticed is some of those cars looked rough, Dave. Like they were pretty beat up, some of those PCCs.
Yes, yeah, I'm not mute. Yes, there was a derogatory joke that we had heard that because of the few, you want my video started? Okay. I think it was the operators who were telling us this. It said, the gray cars, they don't do any work on them. They just paint them up and Pittsburghians think it's a new car. But yeah, some of them were rough. Hey, some of them had 6 months left to operate. November 14th, 1971 was when the 53, 44, and 49 went away, which actually was the last of the major abandonments of streetcars in Pittsburgh.
Mhm. Lots
Nice.
of great, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say lots of very nice comments coming in through the chat. Feel free to
Oh,
scroll
good.
through some of those. A lot of people, like one of our volunteers, Ray, says he really likes seeing the 44 and 49 lines a little before his time. Nice comments. Let's see.
So to Mr. Shukas, I was at S3G. That'll mean something to you. That was a designation of a reactor for submarine training for the rest
Yep.
of you guys.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Great. And then you should have the ability to unmute yourself now if you would like to make a comment or pose a question for Dave.
Yes, not MUTC. Yeah. I was in traffic engineering in college. So, yeah.
I'll stop the
Let's see,
share here so we can all see each other. Let's see, what else did I write down here? Oh yeah, there were lots of just like comments about like people recognizing the locations. Let's see. Some people visited after Pittsburgh first, after these routes were abandoned. So,
Yeah.
so you did not know when you went that the routes were going to be abandoned. You found that out while you were there?
I'm sure we found out when we were there, but
Wow.
we may not have. I really don't remember, but it was there was we knew we wanted to get 4238X because it ran only in rush hour, and we knew we had to get the really 44, 43, 44, 49, and 53. I ended up spending a day in Pittsburgh in October during the World Series in October of 71, where I walked the 53 line. So if you guys want to see what the 53 looked like from end to end, type 53 into the chat. And if there are enough of them, we can do another show, since some of you are still awake. So that's a good sign.
Yeah, we had almost 100 people tonight on
All
this.
right, that's good.
Good.
It is weird doing the presentation because everybody's muted. There is no feedback at all. I don't know, there's no indication if the jokes work, or there's a dying like, that's not a, you idiot, that's a ventilation duct. Okay, yeah, I probably knew that and messed it up. But so while I have everybody's attention, I hope still, is I would encourage you to do this. Do a show, get your slides out, find a scanner. Yes, you need some tools, but it was great because you guys got to spend an hour and a half in Pittsburgh of 1971. I've been here for 15 hours at least over the last several months, and it's been fun because I did a lot more looking at what was then, what's now, that I could put in the show. One of the promises I made to Chris when I said I would do this was, it's not going to go 2 to 4 hours. Everybody's going to get to bed at their regular time. I think we did fine. I think I haven't even looked at a clock, but I have you've heard the grandfather clock we have in the background. So I think it's somewhere around 8:20 to 8:30. So yeah, I highly recommend it. You get more out of doing the show than you think. And that means the rest of us can see it too, because these will go on as long as people have stuff to give.
Absolutely.
All right, we've seen 4 people type in 53. We're
Oh yeah.
there.
Yeah, you're definitely invited back.
All right. All right.
Well, and I think, sometimes it's nice to just see photos too. Like I really enjoy the, full on like historical educational presentations, but sometimes it's just nice to see like, a weekend snapshot in history, which, from the lens of a 15-and-a-half-year-old, and it was so great that you took all the notes too. Was it a challenge to find those old notebooks, or you knew exactly where they were?
Okay, so I have all of the trip notes actually typed up. So this is, it's going to jump in and jump out, but this is the itinerary of my trip. And that's what I was reading from. And there were things that I'd forgotten about. So I did that. I wrote down every slide. The October 71 show, so the Brownsville Avenue show, I think that one, I actually lost the notebook.
Oh, no.
And I had an Esso gas street map of Pittsburgh. And I looked at every slide. I mean, I knew what I had done generally, but I used that map to figure out where I had taken all the pictures. It was painful. It really, it was. I know exactly where I lost it, and so yeah, I'm fastidious in that way.
Well, one of our members just put in the chat, Catherine, one of the program types that we used to do is name that trolley or location, and people would bring in their slides and you discuss where it was taken, and yeah.
I love that game. A colleague of mine and I at Amtrak spent way too many hours looking at Amtrak pictures that were on the internet that didn't have any label and trying to figure them out. And I said, we spent way too much time, but we had a blast. And almost all the time we could figure it out. A couple of them you got within maybe half of the state, but it was fascinating. And then there was a guy I did it with at Pittsburgh in Philly at SEPTA. He was a historian too. And he'd send these pictures to 4 or 5 of us and say, tell us where it is. Yeah, that is fun. So yeah.
Yeah, so if you have any more lost notebooks, we could host one of those
Yeah,
programs.
anybody find it? I think it got lost at the station, and
Oh, man.
that is the only time I've ever lost a notebook.
Oh,
In 50 plus years of film, I only had 3 rolls either damaged or lost. So I think I was really doing pretty good.
yeah.
We're going way. So let's see. Yeah, so the 53. So I will do an October show. I may combine it with another one, just because of the length of it. I was there, I think 24 hours. So Pittsburgh used to be fun to go to by train because you get there in the middle of the night. This is a story that is about 4 trips from this one. You could go get on a streetcar and you could ride all night. And so you didn't need a hotel because then you were running around all day and then you get on the train and go home. I did that one year and got kicked off at South Hills Junction. And I looked at the operator and said, it's 1:30. Don't you guys run all night? No. Oh, okay. How many of you people have walked through South Hills Tunnel? It's scary. It's really scary, but I think the alternative is hanging out in South Hills even worse.
Wow.
But then I've walked through DC at night, so.
Yeah.
I don't know what line you were on, but I worked in the schedules department at the Port Authority, and I began in 75, and there was an all-night library.
Oh.
I think this was
A little bit of a gap in between some trips, but yeah. And downtown, there were still buses and trolleys meeting to transfer passengers.
yeah,
It
it
would
was
need a
nice.
little bit of time to do that.
I mean, I'll tell you the time as I was walking through the tunnel, nothing came out and nothing came in. I mean, that was my big fear, is that, there was this surprise, but that's interesting. maybe he just didn't want to run his trolley anymore. He was going to pull around the side of the station building and nobody would know he was there. He still gets time.
Well, there was only the one library car out there.
Well,
Uh,
that,
did not run an all-night 42 and
No,
certainly
I
not an
was-
all-night Drake, but there was for some reason an all-night library car. And part of it was because they had to get, at one time, the post office was up on Grant Street near 6th Avenue, and the postal workers would get out. And they
Yeah,
had
that
to
makes
take
sense.
postal workers home, and you just didn't put a tripper out. You had to put a run out there. So
mhm.
he ran all night.
Hmm.
Then he finished up a trip or two in the rush hour, and then he went home, went to sleep.
Jim Baker asks how you handled all the film cans from your trip. Do you remember?
Well, I showed you the picture of the little black bag.
Oh, yeah.
That's where the film was.
Okay.
So, I mean, this was 130, this was 160 photos. So only 6 rolls of film. I was only taking one of each.
Did you leave many out?
No, you saw every single picture I took.
Wow.
I
Okay.
was, there is no shame in showing you what I took as a 15-and-a-half-year-old. And there
Yeah.
were some interesting and funny lessons that you really thought this would look like a telephoto shot, didn't you? I said, well, no, but you get a streetscape out of it. So it's fine.
I thought it made it all the more interesting to like
Yeah.
see Pittsburgh through the lens of a budding photographer.
Yeah.
I must say, I liked your distance shots. They showed a flavor of Pittsburgh that probably still is not there today. And you got a feel for the line itself, the width of the streets, the street along Route 44 there with the trees on either side. I remember how the cars used to park up on the curb.
Yeah.
I guess they still do that in some places.
And there's still buses there. So yeah, which are wider. Yeah.
Yeah, there were cool or a few
Thank you.
cool bus shots in your program too. That was neat.
Yeah. I wasn't into buses then.
Yeah.
A mistake that I rectified probably about 10 years later. So as long as we're yammering here, so when we went to Germany, there were streetcars there. I didn't realize when we were growing up in suburban Washington, DC, and that's where we moved. After church on Sundays, we would go to a bakery at the north end of the Route 70 in DC. And the loop went around this bakery. And I always asked, the only thing I was interested in is I wanted to see the bus on rails. That's what I called them. I had no idea what it was, other than it looked like a bus, which they do. TDHs stole the styling of a PCC, and but they were on rails, and I knew that. And it wasn't until I got a book, I think it was Frank Rosam's Trolley Car Treasury as a gift after a year or two over in Europe that okay, this now all makes sense. Yeah, now I know why I like these, because I remember, my dad took me.
Wow.
And you realized that was also when it occurred to me that the styling of the front of the Duvag was somewhat stolen from the PCCs. So anyway, we could go on, but it's 8:30 or so, right? And I did promise everybody we're not going marathons are no fun. You don't get brownie points for marathons. But I
Alright.
thank you all for your attention, your wonderful comments.
This is a great show.
I will,
Yeah, it was.
And if you were to sit there and say, well, where is that in Pittsburgh? I probably would have to say, because I'm not like familiar with Pittsburgh other than the freeways downtown and
mhm.
all that stuff.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but
Well-
then again, if you were say 50 years ago here in DC, it's like much of DC has changed over 50 years. So,
Yeah. So in DC, we used to walk around in the summertime and see where the track was coming through the asphalt.
Mm,
They didn't take much up.
yeah, I think some of it has been nowadays because they've been like getting rid of some of the old tracks. But in Georgetown, I think some of them are still there.
Yeah. Yeah, and the residents
They
want them.
relayed some of the track in Georgetown because the people thought it added to the ambiance down there.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
most of
that's probably the
most of the tracks are gone. Because I'm a native Washingtonian, so I can pretty much tell you where anything ran in DC.
All righty, well, we are gonna wrap it up there. Thank you so much, Dave. That was awesome. Keep me updated on your progress for your next presentations.
Okay.
We'll be happy to host that.
Okay.
And again, if anyone else out there has any shows that fit our museum mission, like cities where our streetcars come from, stuff from Pennsylvania, Ohio, West Virginia, please let me know because I'm always looking for presenters. And I want to thank everybody again for joining us, and we hope to see you next time. Thanks again, Dave. We'll see you at the next one, everybody. Have a great evening.
One last
spectacular.
one last word. I did type the URLs into the chat, so you don't have to find if you haven't gotten to it.
Oh yeah, and then when I put this up on YouTube too, you can look on there as well. So,
Okay.
all right. Thanks a lot. Have a great night, everybody.
See you at the
Night.
trolley
Thank
meet.
you.
Right,
Thank you.
everybody.
Bye.